Hey, Tim Sykes here. Doing a video I'm not proud of, but you have to hear it. I did this really terrible trade and I really want you to learn from my mistakes. I didn't even alert it. I knew it wasn't a good setup. And then I tried to dig myself out and took size. I did literally every single thing wrong. I fully deserved the loss. But what you can take away from this is, look, trading is such a slippery slope. If you do not trade with rules, you will get crushed. And it still blows my mind. I mean, it's only been a few hours since I did this trade. It blows my mind that I was so willing to throw out the rules that have made me so successful, the rules that have made my students so successful, and I just threw them out. All for what? To be a degenerate gambler, which I always rip on. I always say students should not take random trades with random patterns without rules, and I did that exactly. I had a few losses on the day on Xena and AMPG, a few $100s each. That's fine, okay? Losses will happen. Yesterday, December 12th, was a really frustrating day in the markets. I think, shorts are kind of like taking control after, really a crazy few weeks. So you should expect maybe some less spiking, but these are okay losses. This was a $25,000 plus loss, literally weeks of trading down the drain, weeks of disciplined trading down the drain because I took size and I literally just threw out everything and I thought that I could get away with it. And what you have to understand is you can't cheat the process, okay? You can't break the rules and expect success. You can't, try to take these kinds of 50-50 trades. I'm actually kind of relieved that I lost. It's not the worst case. The worst case is if I had done this trade and I had done well, then I would have been reinforced to break my own rules. At least in, a messed up way, this is good in the sense that there's justice in the market. When you break the rules, you get punished, okay? Leave that comment underneath this video if you're watching this. If at any time during this video you understand that. When you break the rules, you get punished. And I'm sharing this because, again, it's mind-blowing to me that I would break all my rules on one trade, size-wise, execution-wise, entry-wise, exit-wise, like completely destroyed all my rules in one trade. And again, I'm at least glad that it was my biggest loss in quite a while. So learn from my mistakes. What did I do? Why was I in it? TRVI was spiking nicely pre-market, and I missed it. Like I had a little FOMO, they had some positive drug news and I was watching it. I was commenting on it. I missed this run up from 360 up to 480 in 1 minute. And usually when you have this kind of spiking potential, it can really keep going. We've seen this previously with CADL, very similar action the previous day, and this one kept going. And, it wasn't just one spike, it was several spikes. So if you actually bought the dip, higher priced stock, and obviously it dropped lower later, but, you had several hours of big spiking. And so in my mind, I'm thinking that's what TRVI is going to do. So I missed this big spike, and I'm watching it here, and then it kind of tops out here in the 480s. And I'm thinking, it's going to have another one of these big spikes, break through 480, take out stops of shorts at 5 and go like 530, 540, 550. That's what I'm thinking. So when it comes down in here and it's consolidating a little bit in like the 460s, 450s, I'm buying. And again, I'm not even alerting because I know that this is speculative. For me, like this was not a trade I should have done. But again, I was like testing out a thesis. It's not the worst thing to test out a thesis. So, I don't mind trying to buy like 1,000 shares here on the dip and then try to sell into like a big spike like this. But it kept coming down, but it kept holding. And as it was holding this level here in like the 440s, 450s, and especially here with this, it doesn't look like much on the chart now, but it looks like it found a bottom right here. This is when I think that it's really going to spike. And this is when I added even more. Small speculative trade here, that's fine. I didn't want to alert it too because like I was thinking that it was going to spike so quick and that even if like I alerted it, like it would be too quick, right? Like this thing spiked right here from 365 to 480 in literally 2 minutes. So I'm thinking that at any time during this downtrending, it's going to respike that quick. And that would be just really difficult to try to alert. So I just was like, let me take a little speculative trade, small size, hot biotechs, these things are running. Right here, I'm like, oh my God, it's about to really take off. This is the start of it. As it turned out, this was just a little fake out bounce. And then right here, I had a chance to cut it, okay? Like when this bounce fails, I had a chance. I could have taken, at this point, I was adding, again, too much size, but I could have taken like a $2,000 or $3,000 loss and it wouldn't have been that bad. It would have been annoying, but at the same time, it's not bouncing the way that I thought. And here is where I made a mistake. This is when I made the worst mistake because it's not bouncing and it looks like, it could fall off a cliff. And obviously that's exactly what happens. You can never trust a stock that fails to keep spiking. You can never trust any of these biotechs, especially pre-market or after hours. So again, you have to kind of know the danger zones. And again, I could have been right. It could have like curled here at 440-ish. I had my average down, to roughly like 446, 447. And I started averaging in at like 465, 463, 460, like adding all the way. And, just stupid because again, I'm thinking that it's going to spike to 5 and break 5 and then go to like the 530s. So in my mind, I'm seeing like what could happen. And yes, that could happen. It's not like the complete worst setup, but when you start envisioning a setup and you think that that has to happen, that's a problem. Okay. When it failed right here, this is the time to exit. This is the time, like my thesis is busted. It had a chance to really bounce. It didn't. And again, this stock is up so much. Like even at 374, it finished at 374. It's up 50% on the day. So when I'm buying it in the mid fours, like it's already up a huge amount. And you cannot be too aggressive on a stock, a biotech stock, a choppy biotech stock pre-market. So I'm taking excessive danger with size for no reason, literally no reason. And I literally didn't even sell any. And I wanted to like get a little sleep on this and then like make a video lesson where like my mind is clear to see what I did right and wrong. I knew that I did wrong, right? I knew that I was breaking my rules, but I ended up with 37,000 shares, like 37,000 shares. It shouldn't have even been 3,700 shares. I took 10 times as much as I should have. And I broke my rules when it was, not doing well. This is a $165,000 position. Stupid. This is my biggest position in months. I have a bigger account now thanks to my success over the past few years, but I don't use it. And this is certainly not a case to use it with this kind of speculative setup. And I'm like, no way is it going to fall off a cliff. It looks like it's having a base here at 440. I thought even if it bounced here and failed, it would probably bounce again and fail. And then I could maybe eke out, like if it failed here again at 455, 460-ish, I could eke out a small gain. That's what I'm thinking. And instead, we got a massive drop. Okay. And then, I'm selling some here into this bounce, but not enough because I'm thinking, okay, this drop from 440 down to 4 and then it bounces to 415. I'm like, oh, this is probably overdone. 4 is now support. So, I'm still holding it. It cracked the VWAP. My thesis is busted. The stock is busted. We're still pre-market and it's just dropping. And this was like a heartbreaking few minutes. This is from 9:15 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And I'm holding the whole time because I'm thinking, no way is this happening. No way is this happening. And then right near the open, it starts panicking. And at this point, I'm like, I see my dollar loss and I'm like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. I need to get out. So I get out into this. Like, this is what's laughable. Not only did I have a terrible entry, terrible, like holding this whole time, or, I think I sold like 6,000 or 7,000 of the 37,000. But holding the majority of the position this time. And then when it panics at the open, because I'm thinking that it's going to spike at the open, this is when I give up. So my entry is crap. But this exit right here, this is me giving up with all the other degenerates and all the other newbies. The volume spike here, like, it trades a lot. Like this is 400,000 shares. Basically 10% of this selling is right for me. And I'm selling right near the lows. I sold in the 378s. I think, what did it get down to? Like 368. But I held through this entire panic I held through this panic, and then I sell at the exact worst time. And then legit, I can't even make this up. I was like laughing out loud. Within a minute of me selling, okay, it's down to 368. I'm like, okay, I saved a little. 1 minute later, it bounces back to 378. And then 1 minute later, right back to 420. And then 2 minutes later, right back to 450. So again, there's no way that I would have had a profit. It was just a busted trade. But I shouldn't have taken size. I should have cut losses here. I should not have cut losses here. Like, you have to make a decision, right? Like, you're either going to cut losses immediately, which, you know, in hindsight, I should, which is why I always say cut losses quickly. But if you're going to hold through this kind of downtrending, like, yeah, it's scary, but you made a decision. So then theoretically, you know, if you are going to be in such a bad situation, that's when you double up and you start to try to dig yourself out. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. Like, as a newbie, you shouldn't try to double up or dig yourself out. Myself, forget the fact that I'm in this whole mess due to, you know, stupidity and being a degenerate gambler. But when I'm already in this situation, you don't panic here. This is when you realize other people are panicking. So, you know, yeah, I guess if I had timed it perfectly, I could have, even if I had some here at 440, let's say I'm cutting losses here at 4 and I'm losing like 10K or 15K. But then into this panic, I'm buying and I can make the 10 or 15K back. Not a good setup at all. And you can't count on this kind of a bounce. But, you know, it's not like as terrible as it might seem. I just executed it so poorly. And this is what happens. This is what causes panics near the open, especially when you have a big pre-market spike and then downtrending and then this panic. Like, I was trying to make it until the market opened, because sometimes you get, you know, no matter what happens pre-market, when the market opens, you can get strength. And that's pretty much what happened here. This was at 933. And this was 1 million shares of buying. So this was not like just like a little bounce. Like, there were a lot of buyers, but shorts had pushed it down. They took advantage of, you know, a lack of strength. Then idiot longs like me just got crushed. And it did come back to 450. So again, you know, not the worst setup, but I made it into my worst setup and worst trade because of my stubbornness. Getting in and not cutting at 440 and not cutting at 4-ish. Not just getting in, but getting in with size. And then doing the absolute worst thing possible, panicking near the open instead of, you know, doubling up or tripling up, which is when I should have. Instead, I'm doubling up, tripling up, quadrupling up at like 450, 444, 446. Like, why am I averaging in the 440s? Because again, I think that 440 is going to hold. And so I want to get as many shares as close to 440 as possible for me being able to sell into my imaginary spike at 5-ish. So just a dumb trade from start to finish, from entry to exit with too much size. And then it's ironic that it spikes, you know, from 370 up to 450 in like 3 minutes. Congrats if you bought the dip, right? I think probably like if you say there is a trade here, maybe there's no great trade because it's so choppy, but probably the best trade is just looking at how far it went pre-market from the 360s up to the 480s. And then you get a second chance right here at 360. Right? Like, if you're unbiased and you're not stuck with size like I was through this whole thing, if you can remain unbiased and you say, okay, this is, you know, a biotech spiker, biotechs are choppy, but you're looking for a good risk reward entry, 440, obviously 450, not the time, you know, it's always a risk. You don't know if this sideways action is going to lead to something more or if it's going to fall off a cliff. So any entry in here, you're opening yourself up to disaster like I did. And then this is worst case scenario with the crack and then the downtrend and then the panic. Crack, downtrend, panic. 1, 2, 3. Shorts are laughing themselves all the way to the bank. But if you can remain unbiased and you say, okay, this is a pre-market biotech spiker, let me really be meticulous with any potential entry. Remember, you don't have to trade. You don't have to trade every day. You don't have to trade every week. You don't have to trade every month. But if you come out of retirement and you wait for a good setup, this is a fantastic opening because this is right where the spike happened. There's a lot of support in here in the 360s. I'm completely biased. I'm completely shell-shocked from the size of my loss and the size of the position. So I'm not thinking clearly. I'm just trying to, you know, cut the pain. But with a clear mind, and if you have no position, 360 is actually a good entry. Now you can't, expect for it to bounce from 360 up to 450 in a few minutes. This is best case scenario. But these biotech spikers, these choppy biotech spikers, you don't want to just buy randomly. You don't want to buy randomly with size, as I hopefully have proven to you. But there is opportunity. It's not like this just faded all day. Yes, it did fade by the end of the day. And, after this spike, it actually got all the way back to 460. But aside from this morning spike, the afternoon was just clearly in charge with the shorts. Same thing with CADL. CADL was a great spiker early on when it had the positive news, and it even was a nice spiker yesterday from, the 7s to the 10s. But by the day end, it's back. And PALI also, this is another one. We're seeing a lot of these biotech spike early when shorts get squeezed, but at the same time, the shorts regain control and these things are all fading by day's end. So that's the trend right now. Even AMPG, which, is not biotech, they had the quantum news, this one is spiking really quickly. And this is, very symbolic of what short sellers are going through, where they might be right fundamentally and they're right that these stocks eventually fade, but these things can spike in a hurry. So there's a huge advantage if you're there at the right time of day for the upside spikes. But you can't just say, especially after the big spikes come and go, you can't say that they're going to come back. I had a small loss on AMPG trying to dip by this, thinking that there's going to be another spike. Sometimes you just get one big spike and then it's done, or two big spikes and then it's done. You have to recognize what's happening. So example after example, even Xena, this has been a nice recent spiker, and this one is also choppy. This is happening all across the market. So I'm not really that surprised that TRVI faded. Like I said, I don't mind my small losses on Xena or AMPG. This was the problem. Size is the problem. I make so many videos being so meticulous, trading with small size, trading conservatively, and that's good. That's how you should be as a trader. But when you throw out those rules and you say size doesn't matter, I'm right, you think that you're better than the market, you think that you're better than the rules, you get blasted. And I just got absolutely dominated here. Literally weeks of profits wiped out. Fortunately, not months or years of profits wiped out, because again, I've been doing well. But this is such a slippery slope. And from start to finish, I did it really poorly. And the only upside here is that I get to show you, and explain, and hopefully you remember this, because, I have some losses, but when they're small losses, people are like, yeah, you're meticulous, small losses. Okay, got it, Tim. It doesn't really impact you. Big losses, on the other hand, they do impact you. I remember, what was it, a year ago, I had a big loss, a similar $20,000 plus loss on EFTR, where I was buying a biotech pre-market, same kind of setup. And then I was surprised that they did a toxic financing. And I actually had a fat finger mistake. I took too big of a position. This was not a fat finger mistake. This was a personality mistake. This was me being too aggressive, thinking that it was okay again to flirt with size, because these biotechs would spike so fast and I wanted to be there for it. So I was building a position ahead of any potential spike. And there just was no big spike until after a big panic. That's what's so ironic. There actually was, how much did it spike off those lows? I still can't get over the fact that it spiked so quickly off the lows. I wasn't wrong that it could spike fast. I was just $1 a share off. I thought that it was going to spike big off these 440s, and instead it spiked big off these 360s. But 360 to 450, it did spike 90 cents a share within a few minutes. It's unfortunate though, because that spike happened roughly $1 a share lower from where my entry was. So, choppy stock, terrible trade, terrible execution, entry, exit, size. I did everything wrong. So this is an example of a worst case scenario, wiping out weeks of hard work. Please leave a comment below if you understand the lesson here. Do not break the rules, especially with size, okay? For me, again, I'm trading for charity. I make the sad joke that now some school won't be built because of this, because this is basically the cost of a school in Bali. But I'm going to make it back. I will build more schools in Bali. I'll be more disciplined. I'll learn from this. And I hope that you can learn too. But I definitely need, a trading timeout, especially for any amount of size. I think in January of 2025, I'm going to I have a plan. I'll make a separate video, but I'm going to have a few brokerage accounts all with small size. So there's going to be no way for me to take such big size and screw up like this again. Cheers. I'll see you in chat.